Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a truly fascinating framework by Amir Mohamad Ardalan. Usually when we look back at history, we treat it kind of like an art museum. We walk through, we admire the artifacts, and then we leave. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if ancient civilizational concepts aren't just symbolic art, but actually functional technology? In this explainer, we're going to explore Ardalan's 5 windows perspective. It's this brilliant methodological tool designed to take ancient historical knowledge, specifically from pre-modern Iran, and functionally translate it into structural solutions for our modern world. Okay, let's dive into this cognitive roadmap. We'll be looking at 1. The crisis of heritage. 2. Rational reconstruction. 3. The 5 analytical windows. 4. Diagnosing functional drift. 5. The triaxial Achaemenid scale. And finally, 6. Designing future institutions.
Section 1. The crisis of heritage. The methodological dead end.
Right now, we're facing a major philosophical conflict regarding how we view our historical past. The source material argues that when we look back at civilizational history, our modern methods have essentially led us into a total dead end. We're trapped between 2 extreme and honestly equally unproductive ways of engaging with where we came from. Ardalan categorizes these 2 failed extremes beautifully. On one side, we have sterile nostalgia. This is when a society basically turns the past into a shrine. They worship ancient concepts, keeping them locked in this halo of sanctity. But by doing that, they completely empty those concepts of any real-world relevance or problem-solving power. And then on the flip side, we have epistemic rupture. This is the modern impulse to just dismiss all historical heritage as a heap of superstitions, myths, and outdated fables. But by cutting ourselves off, we lose thousands of years of human problem-solving experience. Both paths lead to a functional dead end. You either suffocate the past under museum glass or you throw it in the trash. Neither one is going to help you solve today's problems.
Section 2. Rational reconstruction. The third path.
So, if nostalgia and rupture are dead ends, how do we correctly engage with these historical concepts? Well, the source material proposes a structural solution, a third path. And this third path is called rational reconstruction. The author defines this not as some academic fetish, but as gradual conceptual engineering. Think of it like a conceptual scalpel. The goal isn't to force today's meanings onto the past. Rather, it's to extract the latent, hidden functions embedded within ancient myths and rituals, and then structurally translate them into modern applications. It turns out ancient concepts, long before they became myths, were actually highly practical tools for social coordination. Rational reconstruction aims to recover those tools.
Section 3. The 5 analytical windows, the operational core.
So how do we actually do this? We use the 5 analytical windows. This is the exact step-by-step methodology used to extract these hidden structures from ancient texts. It acts like a sequential processor with 5 distinct steps. Window 1 is the origin, finding the oldest textual foundation of a concept and stripping away all those later romantic interpretations. Window 2 looks at the historical function. What practical, socioeconomic problem did this concept actually solve in its time? Window 3 analyzes the distortion, pinpointing exactly when and why the concept lost its original function. Window 4 seeks the modern equivalent, finding a modern institution that shares the exact same functional DNA rather than just some superficial similarities. And finally, Window 5 is the operational principle, extracting a clear, actionable rule for institutional design today.
Now, what's really interesting here is how we anchor this abstract theory with concrete case studies to see the functional translation in action. Take 2 ancient Persian concepts, Mithra and Varathragna. In Windows 1 and 2, we discover Mithra wasn't just some sun god, he was the ancient mechanism for covenant enforcement and trust. And Varathragna wasn't just a war deity, he represented systemic resilience against massive environmental crises like severe drought. But when we move to Window 3, we see the distortion. Mithra got reduced to a romantic legend, and Varathragna devolved into a simple martial war slogan. Window 4 is where we do the functional translation. The modern equivalent of Mithra isn't a new religion. It's decentralized trust architectures like smart contracts. The modern equivalent of Varathragna, institutional crisis management.
And here is Window 5, the real payoff. These are the operational principles extracted from those ancient proto-institutions. From Mithra, we learn that contractual integrity precedes coercive authority. Basically, a legal system works best when breaking a contract is economically irrational, relying on rational incentives rather than centralized, top-down force. From Varathragna, we extract that effective governance is defined by the capacity to maintain systemic order and clear bottlenecks, not just flexing dominance. These are incredibly sophisticated rules for modern structural design, and we pulled them directly from ancient myths.
Section 4. Diagnosing functional drift, the pathology of concepts.
To truly apply this methodology, though, we have to understand the pathology of concepts. Why do powerful institutions and words break down over time? Ardalan diagnoses this failure using a term called functional Druj. Now, in ancient Iranian thought, Druj represented chaos or a departure from order. Here, functional Druj is defined as the gap between a concept's intended problem-solving function and its actual execution. Concepts don't just naturally fade away, they suffer from semantic and functional degradation. They lose their efficacy and often become completely empty instruments that are just used to maintain the status quo.
To really grasp the real-world impact of functional Druj, consider the betrayal of language. The source gives a very powerful example using a concept like justice. The original function of justice was to maintain an active, synergistic, and flourishing social order. But under functional Druj, the word sticks around, while the reality completely vanishes. Justice gets reduced to a mere file sitting in the archives of a hopelessly slow judiciary. Freedom becomes this hollow slogan thrown around on official podiums. We end up calling completely different realities by the exact same words, and that right there is functional Druj.
Section 5. The triaxial A-shake scale, the evaluative metric.
So if functional Druj is the disease, how do we diagnose it? We need a reliable metric to evaluate whether a concept or institution is actually operating correctly or if it's failing. Ardalan reaches back into antiquity to repurpose the concept of Asha, the ancient Iranian principle of cosmic truth and order, and turns it into a modern evaluative metric called the Achaemenid scale. This scale operates as a sequential chain of causation across 3 axes. First up is predictability. A healthy institution reduces uncertainty, which allows individuals to rationally plan their lives. That naturally leads to the second axis, viability. Because life is predictable, people can focus on survival and flourishing, totally reducing their existential anxiety. And finally, when you have predictable and viable individuals interacting with each other, you get the third axis, synergy. This means transaction costs are lowered and true collective mutual benefits emerge. This is literally the path from individual rationality straight to collective societal health.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this. We can use this scale as a diagnostic test. Functional distortion, or functional Druj, occurs the exact moment a legal concept, an institution, or a policy significantly reduces predictability, viability, or synergy in a society. This matters immensely, folks, because it gives us a completely objective, functional metric for evaluating any legal or social system in the world today. It pulls the conversation out of abstract morality and drops it right into functional reality.
Section 6. Designing Future Institutions, the Persian Renaissance.
So, how do we pull this whole shebang together? The framework we've just explored serves as the methodological engine for a broader intellectual project that the author calls the Persian Renaissance. Now, the source makes it explicitly clear. This project is absolutely not about returning to some ancient imperial grandeur, nor is it about blindly copying Western models. Instead, it's about utilizing functional translation to design new institutions capable of handling today's insane complexities. Whether we are navigating the age of artificial intelligence, designing decentralized networks, or reforming massive legal frameworks, the goal is to reestablish that Achaemenid order, predictability, viability, and synergy, through sheer systemic efficiency. It's about taking the present seriously and using civilizational memory as an operational blueprint.
I want to highlight this incredibly powerful quote from the text. Truth is not an abstract concept. It is a practical choice at every moment of existence. The ultimate thesis here is that the order of the world isn't some inescapable cosmic destiny. It is a human choice. And we make that choice every single day through the concepts we design, uphold, and implement in our society. We've covered a lot of ground today, looking at history not as a dusty, silent museum, but as a high-tech laboratory for institutional design. The 5 windows perspective gives us a scalpel to cut right through the betrayal of language and fix the functional drift in our own systems. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. Look around at the failing systems in your own industry or your own society. How will you functionally translate the memory of the past to redesign the broken concepts of today? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.